Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1050B, and today's date is August 16th, 2016, and the title of the episode is China Enters into the Middle East Arena. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. The interview with Bix Weir has been uploaded to the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. So you can go right over to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight. You'll see the interview there. Or you can come over to x22report.com site. All you have to do is scroll down a little bit, look over to the right-hand side. You'll see the video there. Or you can go to newssentinel.com. Same thing. Scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side, and you can play the interview there. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, we talked about the Zika virus psyop, and it looks like the Zika virus psyop campaign, well, it is just warming up for this late summer or early fall. And the scaremongering is full throttle right now. And we can see by looking at what they're doing, they're trying to convince everyone that the Zika virus is spreading and it's getting worse as time goes on. And the ruling elite, they know very well that when it comes to scaring the general public, the tactic works more effectively when you build it up rather than hit the audience with a sudden story. So they've been building this up over time, saying, oh, look, it's in Puerto Rico. Oh, look, there's one case in Florida. It's spreading, and it started out in Brazil, and they're continually using this. Now, Zika virus is a classic example of this. We can see it real time right now. Now, before the Zika virus, didn't we have the Ebola scare? Didn't we have the swine flu scare? Didn't the CDC come out with all their computer models telling us within 6 months millions of people were going to be infected unless we do something? Whatever happened to that? It just disappeared out of thin air. They got it under control. But pharmaceutical companies, they got money from the government to create vaccines. And who knows, this most likely will be used later on. Now, the first thing that we should note about the Zika virus is that the American Medical Association is now officially on board with this, because they're saying that the Zika virus, which has been around since 1969, the patent is held by the Rockefeller Foundation. They are now calling it a sexually transmitted virus. Right now, this is just another layer of the Zika virus psychological operation. So they're making it seem like it is much, much worse than it really is. Now, when you hear this, they don't have proof that it is. What they're doing is they're assuming it could be transmitted sexually. They're not showing any links or any way of this actually happening. They haven't run any tests, but they're just using this to build the psyop up. The New York Times even jumped in on the psyop with a recent article making a spectacle of the new form of Zika sexual transmission, and they're trying to sell it like a new product to convince everyone that this is going to be a major problem. Now, the question is, why are they doing this? Well, there's many different agendas associated with this. One, to get funding for vaccines, to have people vaccinated, to make people scared, to control them, maybe to declare a state of emergency, maybe to postpone the elections. And we can see they're doing this with many different things happening right now. We see Milwaukee. George Soros is now linked to what is happening in Milwaukee. They're trying to start a race war. They've done this many, many times before. And they're trying to push this very hard. They want a reason to postpone these elections. And it will be very easy for them to say, listen, the Zika virus or these race wars that are going on, it's completely out of our control. And we would love to have these elections held. But we can see what's happening in this country. We just can't let it happen because of what is going on here. And we need to declare a state of emergency. We need to postpone the elections until we get the situation under control. Now, this will be temporary. Remember that word, temporary. I like to use that a lot. Like, we're going to go off the gold standard in 1971. This will be temporary. It was 40 years of temporary. And we can see right now, they rather do it this way than have the elections move forward, because they are very nervous right now, and they don't want the people to decide on who's going to be president. I know everyone believes that this is a free democratic society where we all vote and the votes are counted up and it's all above board and the person gets elected. No, that's not what it is. They have a certain candidate. They manipulate whatever they have to manipulate to get that person inside to take instructions from the shadow government, the elite. And then they call the shots, and that person follows what they're saying. Now, if they get someone in there that doesn't follow along, they have to be removed later on. And if a person does get into office, most likely, if they're not following along, they will be removed later on. So it'll be a lot easier to say, listen, this is completely out of our control, and this is why the elections are postponed. And we need to watch very closely how all this unravels as we get closer and closer to the elections. Am I saying this is going to definitely happen? No, but we can see they're trying to push this type of an agenda. Now, we know for a fact that their agendas, their goals don't always work out, their plans don't always work out, and things completely fall apart. So we're going to be watching this very, very closely as we get closer and closer to the elections. We see out in Afghanistan, the United States has called on India to step up its military aid to Afghanistan. They want them to supply attack helicopters to help out there. A lot of the other nations are not allowed to bring in any type of equipment because the sanctions imposed on Russia following its military involvement in Ukraine have prevented numerous donors from supplying Afghanistan with Russian-made aircraft or spares. So India was not constrained by any such consideration, and it has no sanctions in place against Moscow. And this is why they're saying, India, you must supply the equipment that we need in Afghanistan. We see out in Ukraine, Kiev admits Russia does have evidence of what took place in Crimea. They admit that, yes, we were involved. And the sabotage attempt really took place. Now, we know the United States was out there saying, we have no information about this. And we know once Russia supplies the evidence, it's completely over for the United States. Because they're going to look like fools, the U.S. government. And Kiev finally came out and said, okay, listen, quietly, don't supply the evidence. Yes, we know we did this. And they're admitting it. Now, of course, this is not going to be plastered all over the corporate media. It was done very quietly. We see out in Ukraine, there's a huge problem. Now, we know the United States had this coup d'etat in Ukraine. We know the economy was completely destroyed. We know Russia is no longer supplying a lot of the energy to Ukraine. We see this austerity. The currency is collapsing. Utility bills are very high. And the U.S., NATO, Ukraine, they want to start this war. They're trying. And they need more individuals to join up to the armed forces. So there's a flyer going around saying that they will pay for the utility bills. There's an opportunity to take part in a NATO peacekeeping contingent, and wages are 1,000 to 1,200 euros. And you'll be able to pay your utility bills with this. So they're asking people to enroll in the Ukraine's armed forces, and get paid by NATO. And they're using the utility bill as like the hook to say, listen, we know they're very high. This will pay it off. Just join the armed forces. And they're trying to get more and more people involved because they need a bigger force for this major, major offensive that they're trying to push. And we're going to have to watch that very closely. Now, out in Libya, the United States is continually bombing in that country. The unity government is falling apart. And we see that Italy is out there saying, listen, we will train the security forces inside of Libya. Germany says it will now participate in the training of the Libyan Coast Guard. So we already see all these countries getting into Libya, bringing advisors, trainers into the country. And they use this as an excuse that, yes, we're in here to train the security forces. We're in here to train the Coast Guard. And this is why we have teams inside of this area. And we have to remember, NATO and the rest of these European countries, remember, they were sailing their warships, helping out with the refugee situation. Well, all of these warships were in place for what is going on in Libya, soon to be what's going on in Syria, because that is not over just yet. We see right now that Turkey is still contemplating if they should close the border with Syria. I know Russia came out and said, listen, you need to close this off. And if Turkey does close the border, this is definitely an indicator, a sign that they are moving closer and closer to Russia. We see today that Iran has allowed Russia to fly their strategic bombers from the air base inside of Iran into Syria. The Tupolev 22 M3 bombers, they made runs, they hit militants in Syria, and we can see right now that Iran, Russia, and now China, which has now stepped into the arena, into the Middle East, they are ready to have closer ties with Syria and provide humanitarian aid, and they're getting ready to train Syrian personnel by Chinese instructors. So China's Central Military Commission, they arrived in Damascus on Tuesday, so they can have talks with the Syrian defense minister. China and Syria's militaries have traditionally been very friendly to each other, and China's military is willing to keep strengthening exchanges and cooperation with Syria's military. So we have China and Russia and Iran now in Syria, cozying up to Assad. The United States and the coalition forces have been using the story that Assad must go because he's a dictator. He's torturing his people. Then they changed the story saying that, we have to go into Syria because there's terrorism. We have to go into Syria to help the moderate rebels. And we realize the story continually changes. And what we're seeing right now is that the United States government, the central bankers, well, this is a very tough situation. Since China has joined in on all of this, where does this leave the United States? Now, we know their main objective here is to start war. We know China and Russia have been trying to step aside and create an atmosphere of peace because they realize, the United States government central bankers, their idea right now is to provoke some type of war. Putin has already came out and said this when he was speaking to journalists, saying, don't you realize how close we are to a world war? Don't you see what's happening? And we can see right now the United States government central bankers, they have two alternatives right now. Peace, join up with China and Russia, get rid of the terrorism in the country, and leave Syria alone. Leave Iraq alone. Leave Libya alone. Leave Yemen alone. Or try to reach their goal. And their goal is to have Syria, to have Iran, to control the Middle East. And we can see right now, I don't think they're going to give up on this goal. I know Russia has been trying to convince the United States government, trying to box them into a corner, because we're getting reports that the Russian defense minister is saying that United States and Russia, they're very close on joining together and battling in Aleppo to remove the terrorists there. Now, of course, the United States is saying, the United States Department spokeswoman Elizabeth Trudeau, well, she refused to confirm any collaboration whatsoever. Now, Russia continually tries to push them in this direction. If terrorism is the problem, then we should have a united force to go after terrorism. This is why Russia has been asking the United States to give us a list of the moderates and give us a list of who the terrorists are. This way we will hit the terrorists. We will not hit the moderates. But we know the United States has them all intertwined because they pay them, they supply them with weapons, and they're all terrorists. They're all paid mercenaries. So let's see what the United States does at this point. Are they going to go along with Russia, or is something going to happen where that's completely off the table and we see the next event occur? And this is something that we really need to watch, because this is all intertwined into the economy. They're doing this. They're in Syria because the economy is falling apart. It's the petrodollar. They need to continually go into these countries, spread debt, put the natural resources on the dollar, and every country has to sell oil using the dollar. If they lose this, their system dies. Snap of a finger, boom, dead. This is why the U.S. went into Libya in the first place, went into Lebanon, went into Iraq, and into all these countries. Because some of these countries, they were getting ready to use other currencies, or even gold, to sell the oil. And guess what? The U.S. could not stand for this. So when we look at what's going on here, we see everything is connected. And the entire system, the entire rights of the people, the way we live here in America, well, it's deteriorating. And we've seen it over time. And let's look at some of the signs that point to the American people going back to a global feudalist type of society. I mean, we see arbitrary arrests, incarcerations without regards to individual human rights or civil liberties or constitutional protections. Yes, we do see this. We also see the ability of the international banking cartels to plunder the global population's personal bank accounts and savings. Yes, we do see this. We see the increased militarization of police. Yes. We see debtor prisons. That is happening right now. We see the privatization of prisons, making it profitable to arrest and incarcerate people, even if they're innocent. We see the refusal of the three separate branches of government to watch each other, intervene during times of overreach. And these branches of government, well, they're not loyal to the people. They're loyal to central bankers. They're loyal to foreign governments. They're loyal to corporations. They're loyal to everyone but the people. We see the refusal of the appellate or federal courts to review or investigate state court corruption, police corruption, judicial corruption. We see those in power. They are defined by different set of laws compared to the everyday person. We see the refusal of the government to punish or jail individual bankers. They have control of the monetary system. They have control of the media. They have control of the population. So, have we returned to a global feudalist society? It's starting to look that way. It's starting to feel that way. From everything that we can see, from everything that's been going on, It all points in that direction. And as time goes on, it will get worse and worse. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.